Well, are the 6 dead women found near Portland, Oregon, victims of a serial killer? Or has the true crime community really spun out of control this time? Let's examine some of the victimology, the crime scenes, and the victim risk levels to determine if a serial killer is loose in Portland. Well, hello everybody and welcome to Profiling Evil. In this video on the Portland women, the Portland 6 who have recently been found dead in locations, odd locations at times around the city of Portland in Oregon. Now please folks, hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell so that you're getting all of our videos. And please like this video and share with your friends. Now I'm coming from New York. I slipped out of my office here at lunchtime to do this. I'm sitting in one of the parks in town, down in the Midtown area, so it's up to you to figure out which one it is. I've been working in New York City this week on a couple of things and meeting with police. I decided I'd weigh in on this case since so many of you are emailing me about it. And by the way, I love getting your emails, and I really do try to respond to all of them whenever it's possible. Sometimes that means responding from an airplane. But thanks for letting me know your interest in the case. And I want you to know I'm going to give out a special shout out to Fofa Cat, Katie, for sending me her thoughts on this case along with some of her analysis, which I'm going to use in my commentary. Now, 6 women have been found dead in less than 3 months in secluded areas around Portland, Oregon. Media outlets are making a big deal of the fact that all the bodies were located within 100 miles of each other. Now, it might be significant, or it might have something to do with the fact that Portland has nearly 700,000 people living in it. If you increase that radius to 100 miles, the population numbers zoom from 700,000 to 3,164,000 people. That means if we're talking about these 6 victims who have been found, this represents 0.00018% of the population. Now, this doesn't minimize the pain that these victims would have undoubtedly suffered, the pain of their surviving family members, and it somehow doesn't mitigate the concern that we have, but it does show us how unlikely it is that you or I might become victim to this same kind of event. In fact, it might also help us determine whether this was really committed by a serial predator, which seems to be one of the common theories. So let's take some time and examine this case a little bit closer. And thankfully, I'll be back in my office back in Salt Lake where I can have a little quieter circumstances, but how do you pass up doing it from down on the streets in New York City? So let's examine this case a little closer. And thankfully, police have not determined whether these victims were death by homicide or not. Now, they have indicated that one fits the mold, with a medical examiner's report that the victim died as a result of neck and head trauma, blunt force trauma injuries. Now, there are a couple of interesting twists in the case, though, primarily the age of the victims, which is 20 to 40 years old. And some of the locations seem fairly interesting when they're combined, and you know, this location where they were discovered in a second. Now, police are saying then that the true crime community is actually causing undue concern about these cases. And they've gone as far as stating that these discussions have led to anxiety and fear in the community. Now, they've clearly stated that this speculation isn't supported by facts of the case, adding this caveat at the point that, again, this isn't being supported by facts of the case. There's not a serial killer according to the facts. So let's learn more about each of the victims in this case, starting with 22-year-old Kristin Smith, who's the first woman to be discovered on February 19th in the woods out off of Deerdoff Road and Flavel Street. Now, her cause of death has not been determined. Police conducted a number of searches in the area with no results, and it's important to note that it was actually November 19th of 2022 when she was last reported seen by her mother. Now, her mother also reported that Kristin would check in on a weekly basis with family members. So when she went silent on November 19th and her phone went dead on the 20th, that was really suspicious to law enforcement. And, of course, the family. Now, Kristin went by another last name, the name of Ritas as well. And this woman was known to frequent the southeast areas of Portland and downtown Portland. One really interesting personality trait that I discovered was that Kristin typically wore wigs, often changing her appearance. Now, nothing's been released about her lifestyle, but her mother reports that in a news video that we're going to watch here, that she fears that human trafficking of some sort might be involved. Now, to me, it appears really clear that Kristin was living a high-risk lifestyle. Let's watch this video.
More than 2 months after she went missing in Southeast Portland, family members of a Gresham woman are holding on to hope that she will be found. Take a look here. This is 22-year-old Kristin Smith. Her mom last spoke to her on November 19th. Fox 12's Drew Marine spoke with Kristin's mom tonight, who's hoping for your help finding her daughter. Drew.
Melissa Smith says Kristin was last seen here near Mall 205. Take a look at this flyer they've posted around parts of Portland. Melissa says she likes to wear different wigs, so she may not look exactly like the photo on this.
Missing.
A tattoo of a red butterfly on her different wigs, so she may not look exactly like the photo on this flyer, but she has a tattoo of a red butterfly on her right hand.
It is quite like a piece of you is missing.
Each day that passes and Melissa and Haley Smith don't hear from 22-year-old Kristin Smith, they get more concerned she's in danger.
A main concern of ours now is sex trafficking. We don't know, but with things we've been told, or, you know, people that know her are saying it's a possibility because this is not like her to just disappear.
Kristin's mom, Melissa, last talked to her on November 19th and hasn't had contact with her since. She says Kristin always checks in with family and friends at least once a week, if not more.
But then when I tried to reach out to her again, she didn't answer, and I thought that was strange. I was like, well, she might be busy. Next day, same thing, and then phone just went straight to voicemail, and that's where I'm like, this is very odd. Something's not right.
Kristin, who sometimes uses the last name Ritas, was last seen around Mall 205 in Southeast Portland, but also hangs out in other areas of Portland, too. They've hung up this flyer and looked for her around the Gateway Transit Center, at homeless shelters around downtown Portland, and on Southeast 82nd Avenue, hoping someone might be able to spot her. Melissa says she typically wears different wigs, so she may not look like the picture on the flyer.
She does have a tattoo, stick and poke, on her right hand of an outlining of a red butterfly. So that's a distinctive way to identify her.
Now, they're just waiting for Kristin to come home.
It's horrible. I cannot even describe to you what it feels like to have a child missing, and just, you don't know if they're alive. You don't know if they're okay.
Well, next we're going to talk about 32-year-old Joanna Speaks, who was found dead inside of a barn. Now, this one's really interesting. Inside of a barn at abandoned property in Ridgefield, Washington, which is about 22 miles north of Portland. I put it on a map here, and the last time she was seen was about a month earlier. Now, this is the case where the medical examiner reports that she died of blunt force trauma to her head and neck. Family members speaking on the thing reported that Speaks had been battling with drug addiction for a number of years, but they described this woman as having kind of a funny personality, somebody who could be sarcastic, but someone that was incredibly witty. She left behind 7 siblings, 3 children. I mean, this is really a tragedy. Now let's pause for a moment and watch this short video about Joanna Speaks.
Just why? Just how, like, why did this happen? How? It just doesn't make sense.
Robin Speaks is desperately searching for answers after her younger sister, 32-year-old Joanna Speaks, was found murdered.
we're all just asking every single thing that you could think of. Just, you know, maybe it was this, or did we check here, or we're trying to cover all the bases, but we don't know.
Stepsister Ariel Hamby says the family has so many questions.
The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and neck, and that's all we know.
Richfield Police Department and Clark Cowlitz Fire Rescue responded to reports of a body on April 8th. Authorities say located on a property off South 5th Street and 78th Place, about 1 mile off I-5. Though detectives say it doesn't appear that's where Joanna was killed. And according to the Clark County Sheriff's Office, there are indications that Joanna Speak's body was moved to near this abandoned property. Behind these no trespassing signs, there's an abandoned barn. That's where the sheriff's office found Joanna's remains.
It keeps me up at night thinking that whoever did this to her, and that person is walking around.
Joanna lived in the Oregon City area. Her family says she leaves behind 7 siblings and 3 children, her 7-year-old daughter and 2 teenage sons.
You can definitely tell they're sad. They've broke down the first couple days, but now it's like they try to avoid talking about it.
Her sisters say Joanna had been battling addiction on and off for years, and the last time her family had contact with her was in March.
We have amazing memories with her being a big kid. She's hilarious, sarcastic, and super witty. So she was just the missing piece of our family.
The family has started a GoFundMe to help with funeral expenses. And as for finding justice for Joanna,
not a family that gives up, and we won't give up. Fighting answers, doing whatever we have to get some sort of peace for her. And that we'll find them.
In Ridgefield, Daisy Caballero, KGW News.
Well, next is 24-year-old Charity Lynn Perry, who was found in a culvert. And this is interesting. Was she trying to get out of the weather, or was she stuffed under there? She was found out on the East Historic Columbia River Highway in Multnomah County on April 24th. Her family appeared on a news clip after her body was discovered. Now, according to family and media reports, Charity suffered from debilitating mental health issues, including schizophrenia. So again, we're seeing now the risk levels change based on circumstances, situation, and environment. Here, the circumstance of having mental illness, including schizophrenia, they say. So let's watch this news clip about Charity Lynn Perry.
I am Charity's mother.
The families of 6 women in our region are reeling as 6 bodies have been found in just the past few months. Tonight, Portland police say they want to dispel rumors, adding that right now there's no reason to suggest the deaths are connected. K2's Francis Lynn spoke with the mother of one of those victims and joins us live now with more. Fran?
Well, Barry, Portland police says even though these cases may seem similar in some ways, they don't believe they are connected in any way as of right now.
Several death investigations underway recently all seem to have one thing in common. The bodies of 6 women, all under the age of 40, were found in the past 3 months in Multnomah, Clark, Clackamas, and Polk counties. But Portland police says it's most likely just a coincidence, and they have no reason to believe any of the 6 investigations are connected. Today, I spoke with the family members of 24-year-old Charity Perry, who was found on April 24th.
She always had a smile and a laugh that could light up the world. She was an amazing person.
Perry's loved ones say she was a very loving and kind person.
She got the school to do a penny drive, a fundraiser, and she did a big dog food drive for the Cowlitz County Humane Society.
Perry's mother and cousin wanted us to share what she went through before she died and raise awareness about the importance of mental health services.
Charity suffered from extreme mental health issues. it being schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm. That is what mental health looks like, is that. And the other picture is her in her light. And, you know,
she was a person and she was very loved. I think that sometimes appearances and lifestyles can somehow dismiss the idea to outside people.
The first of the 6 women, 22-year-old Kristin Smith, was found in Multnomah County in February. In April, 32-year-old Joanna Speaks was found in Ridgefield. Bridget Ramsey was found in Polk County, where another unidentified woman was found as well. Most recently, 22-year-old Ashley Reel was found in Clackamas County in May.
The members of the family of the other girls, if there's anything that I can do, that I'm here for them.
Well, on the same day that Charity Lynn Perry's body was discovered, police responded to the scene of another body that was discovered, an Indigenous woman who was found inside of a tent in Portland. Now, that's really important. Found inside of a tent. We need to try to figure out if this was her tent or not. Of course, we don't know who she is, so that's going to be interesting. But there were no signs of foul play, according to law enforcement. Now, I did a little digging around on the U.S. Department of Interior's Indian Affairs website, and it states that Native American women and Alaskan Natives struggle with high rates of assault, abduction, and frankly, murder. Now, a recent study revealed that 4 in 5 Indian and Alaskan Native women, those 4 in 5 have experienced violence, and half of those Native American and Indigenous women have endured sexual violence. Now, I'm looking at this little website, and I hope you might go over there and explore that a little bit. But today, according to the website, more than 1,500 American Indian and Alaskan Native Indigenous women sit on the National Crime Information Center's website. Now, those numbers are astounding, and I frankly feel like this is just the tip of the iceberg. The Bureau of Indian Affairs suggests that more than 4,200 murder cases and missing persons cases in the Indigenous population remain unsolved. Now let's jump to the next victim in this case, 31-year-old Bridget Leanne Ramsey Webster. She was discovered on a rural road in Polk County on the 30th of April. Now, there's not a lot of information known about her, but there was some quotes in the media by her step-grandfather, who said he raised this woman as a child, and he kept her in the home until she was a freshman in high school. At that point, he loses contact with her, and he doesn't really say why he loses contact or what happened. May have been that she was ungovernable. Who knows what could have happened? Maybe he couldn't care for her any longer. But we know that she had what might have been construed as a stable home. Well, a week later, police responded to the site where 22-year-old Ashley Reel was found in another wooded area. This is really interesting. Reel was last seen at a fast food restaurant on March 27th, and police are classifying her death as suspicious in nature. I guess the question I've got is, aren't most deaths of 22-year-old young women found in secluded areas suspicious? I mean, not a lot is known about Reel, and the media and police are asking for help. If anyone knows anything about this woman, please reach out to her and let them know what you know, especially if you've had any contact with her in the times, the months, or even year leading up to her disappearance. Now, police are suggesting strongly that the cases do not tie together. And again, they've only indicated that one of these victims is a homicide case. Now, the Indigenous woman clearly, in my opinion, appears a little different than the other victims in this case, having expired in a tent in the downtown area. Now, this doesn't mean that she wasn't murdered, but the medical examiner has not released the cause of death, so anything else would be unsubstantiated speculation. So let's take a moment and look at a map that I've created with the 6 victims plotted out. And as we look at this map, you're going to see the last known location with the victim's name next to it. Each victim is going to be identified by a specific color with a round point signifying the location where they were last seen. And a corresponding color star is going to indicate the location where their body was recovered. Now, if we were to look at this case merely from a geographic standpoint, which is really all I can do at this point, given that we really don't know the cause of death on the other 5 victims, we can only begin to theorize based on geography, the most probable routes that the victim might travel. You know, how they got from point A to point B. And again, as a reminder, A represents the last known location where the victim was seen, the round dot. And the star, if I can make a star here, represents the location where the body was recovered. So this brings up a great opportunity to talk about the different kinds of crime scenes we see in these kinds of cases. And keep in mind that often people refer to the location where the victim is discovered as the crime scene. In reality, there can be multiple crime scenes in every criminal case. And we're going to take the women in aggregate to explain these concepts. And this is going to be rather brief, so I'd recommend that you go back to my other videos where I talk about the differing crime scenes. And folks, what a time to make a plug. Make sure you're joining Profiling Evil's Academy channel memberships. It's a place where you can support us financially, but you're going to get a whole lot more information like the breakdown on these criminal behavior traits. Now, it's a way to support us and I think a way for you to learn a little bit more. But first, let's talk about, when we talk about crime scenes, the initial contact site, or the place where the victim and the potential predator come into contact. Now, I'm speculating on why these women may have been wandering the streets of Portland. And I'm doing this based on the fact that there's evidence that suggests some of them had mental illness. Some may have been involved in drug trade, drug trafficking, or at least in the purchase of drugs. And oftentimes when that's going on, it usually means that there also is a propensity that there's sex trafficking that's going on. That's a way in which they can afford to pay for the drugs and frankly, pay for anything else that they need on the street. But regardless, this moves the victims in this case, including that Indigenous woman who was living in the tent, into a higher risk category. Now go back and watch my video on victim risk typologies and conditions. The kinds of people that generally come into contact in high risk situations, the people that generally victimize high risk victims, are strangers by statistic. Now, there may have been other high-risk individuals, like drug dealers, that they associated with that might have known them by a street name or some other thing that can fit within that stranger category. Or it might be, if there was sexual trade going on, that there may have been Johns who were looking for someone. Now, the initial contact site is that location where the victim and the predator come in contact with each other. Could be places like the seedy downtown areas of Portland. And more likely, the place of initial contact is going to be different than the place where the crime or the assault or murder occurs in this kind of a criminal case. Finally, we're going to talk about where the victim's body is disposed of. What we know for a fact is that the place these women were last seen is different than the place in which their bodies were found. So, initial contact site, very important. How did that victim and suspect or predator, if in fact there is a predator, come together in space and time? Now we're going to talk about the crime scene, the location where the crime actually occurred. You know, we really don't know, and in many cases, the assault usually happens close to the initial contact site in cases like this. Not all cases, but in cases like this particular case. That's because the predator is usually driven by an incredible lust, either for like sexual contact or murder or financial gain or other kinds of things. And usually they aren't patient enough to travel somewhere in order to satisfy their needs. So my guess is that the crime scene was probably fairly close, unless these are more organized serial predators. Now what's really becoming interesting to me is trying to figure out where the crime of assault or murder, if these are murders or assaults, happened. And that's assuming that the cause of death was homicide in these cases. And then, of course, the location where the body is recovered. For instance, we know through media reports that police are saying that they believe Joanna Speak's body was transported from the place in which she was murdered to the location where her body was disposed. So that brings us to the disposal site. The disposal site, or the location in which the body is found, can tell us a great deal about the predator, if a predator is responsible for this. And again, in the Speaks case, we can theorize that she was murdered in a different location than where she was dumped. Number one, we can theorize pretty clearly that she was murdered based on autopsy reports and information from police. In other victims, we don't know if they were taken to the location where their bodies were found or if they traveled there under their own power. So that's going to be really interesting to figure out. What I find suspicious, though, is that I don't think these women who are clearly comfortable on the streets of Portland would go out into the woods to hide or even sleep. That would, I think, be cleared up if police would simply release a little more information about the locations where they were found. Just having information around the campsite. Did they have some sleeping gear with them? You know, a blanket or a sleeping bag. Anything that fits within these things that would suggest possessions were being kept. Now, these are the behavioral things that I look for when I'm trying to determine locations and whether someone planned on being in the location, or if they were just disposed of. And frankly, if a serial predator is involved, it also can tell us a whole bunch, these disposal sites, about the predator themselves, what their mindset is. Why are they picking that place? Remember, these people want to be successful. So they're picking a location where they can hide the body without being disturbed. Now, if a serial predator is involved, there are often similarities in the disposal site. So that's going to be another really important thing that law enforcement is going to have to vet out. The manner or method of death is going to be the same. Remember, these predators, if it's a single predator, is acting out a fantasy that always falls short in the course of the criminal act, and they're trying to fix that, and when they commit the crime again, they start it again, and they start to go through the same patterns, trying to satisfy whatever wacky thing it is going on up here. Now, they're also going to want to know about the manner or method of death, the location where the initial contact's occurring, and many other things. I mean, these are the kinds of things that law enforcement is going to be sorting through as they put this case together. And they're going to also do things like evaluate the registered sex offenders and the recently paroled offenders that are living in the area. But just to give you a sense of how challenging that's going to be, I want to put up on a map the location of all the known registered sex predators in the Portland area. I mean, this map is representing more than 1,400 registered offenders that police must individually evaluate and either focus on or exclude. They need to look at what kind of victim selection process those predators have gone through in the past. They're going to have to look at geographic considerations and, frankly, propensities for violence. Now, police are going to also be looking at past criminal history areas, places where there is always a lot of crime. And again, what we found is in these kinds of cases, based on demography, that victims are going to be in certain areas, oftentimes in some pretty rough parts of town where there are a lot of police calls going on. So density maps like this one will show high crime areas or locations where victims were last seen. These become really valuable in just kind of understanding areas where there are really big problems, and often can lead to community policing efforts to improve those areas. And then, of course, police have to examine all the lists of missing persons and unidentified bodies. And this is something that I've talked about before, but do you realize in the United States alone, There are on average 875,000 missing people filed every year. 875,000 missing person cases filed each and every year. Now, the Bureau of Justice indicates that by statistic, 84% of those people are going to come home at some point during the year and alleviate that number. But that leaves an astounding 104,000+ people who disappear off the face of the earth, never to be heard of again. Now, 104,000 people is a city the size of West Covina, California, or Brockton, Massachusetts, or a Renton, Washington. I mean, could you imagine the impact of a Bend, Oregon, a Woodbridge, New Jersey, or a South Bend, Indiana, completely disappearing, being wiped off the map? The numbers are absolutely staggering, and it helps us understand how important it is that we have databases that track missing people and apply those to investigations in hopes of solving them more quickly. Well, the bottom line, it's that I haven't seen anything yet that convinces me that the Portland Six are victims of a serial killer. Now, it's not quite as sensational to say this, but I feel pretty strongly about it, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are. As more information comes out, my attitude might change a little. Police are going to continue to link these cases together through the victim selection process, through geography, by looking at the manner and method of death and what the motivation for the crime might be. So here's what I'm really interested in, and here's your assignment. What do you think? I mean, is there a serial killer at work, or is this 6 different coincidences that happen to collide in space and time? Is it possible that there is a single serial predator out there who's responsible for all of, or maybe part of, the Portland Six? And most importantly, do you think the number's going to grow? Again, think about this. We're undoubtedly going to see more bodies turning up in this case. Again, it's a 100-mile square area where these 6 victims have been tied together in this case. That 100 square miles represents just under 4 million people. Reason seems to say that there's likely going to be more bodies added to the investigation in this case that we're calling the Portland Six. But what are your thoughts? I want to really hear what you have to say. So thanks for listening to Profiling Evil. I'm here in New York City in the Midtown area. Just left my office to take a lunch break, and I thought I'd record this so I can get it out tonight while I'm at a social here in town. And then I'm going to be heading home. So again, thanks for listening on this Portland Six death investigation case. And keep in mind, I didn't say serial killer case. Remember, death investigation cases determine whether someone died from natural causes, accident, suicide, or if in this case it means something, homicide. So what's your determination, folks? Think about each victim and how you think they died, and put your comments down below. I'm really going to be looking forward to reading your answers, and I hope you'll be kind to each other as you respond back and forth to each other. Again, from New York City, make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button, and that you're getting all of Profiling Evil's notifications on videos like this one. And please consider joining our channel memberships and sharing us with all your friends. Make sure you're checking out Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And folks, please share us with your friends, and please give us a thumbs up. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.